Hey folks, my name is John Lay and welcome back to the channel. Okay, so today we're going to talk about a topic that is somewhat timely and also sensitive. And something tells me that I might regret having uploaded this video after I do so, but whatever, let's give it a go. As you all saw from the title and as you can see from this picture behind me, I'm going to talk about BTS and whether or not they should be forced to serve in the South Korean military as all other able-bodied South Korean men are. Now, 2020 might not have been the best year for a lot of people, but not so much for BTS. For BTS, 2020 has been not that bad of a year. They've released multiple albums and singles, and they seem to be winning every single award there is to be won. And not only that, their parent company, Big Hit, is now selling stocks, and apparently BTS members are millionaires and their employers are billionaires. So it's a great year to be a BTS member. Now, usually, it doesn't really quite matter how successful you are. If you are an able-bodied Korean man and you're between the ages of 18 to 35 and you have not yet served in the army, it's only a matter of time before you get that letter from the Military Manpower Administration cordially inviting you to serve in the army. However, the problem with South Korea's mandatory military service is that it's not just about performing one's patriotic duty to defend the country from foreign aggressors. It also has to do with equity, specifically when it comes to exemptions. Now, as I said earlier, all able-bodied Korean men between the ages of 18 to 35 must serve in the military, and what that naturally means is that if someone is physically or mentally handicapped, that person will be granted exemption. Now, recently, South Korea has also decided that religious exemptions is going to be a thing now. That's not always been the case. But as some people might know, there are also exemptions for athletes. Not every athlete, mind you, but certain athletes. For example, if an athlete has won a bronze medal at the very least at the Olympics, then that person is granted exemption from serving the military. Classical musicians are apparently also granted exemptions. I had no idea about that one. And also, there tends to be some other rather arbitrary decisions that are made regarding exemptions. In 1994, there was a man in South Korea by the name of Lee Chang-ho. Now, some of you might know this man. Most people will probably not know who he is. But in the 1990s, he was South Korea's celebrated Go player. And when he was supposed to serve the military in 1994, there was a huge uproar, and a lot of people demanded that he be given exemptions from having to serve in the military because he was a Go champion. And he was granted exemption. But what about BTS? As I said earlier, BTS has had an extremely successful year. Albums, singles, IPOs. They are South Korea's ambassadors, perhaps South Korea's most effective ambassadors. And with all due respect to Lee Chang-ho, something tells me that BTS is much more influential than he was. So shouldn't BTS members be granted exemptions from having to serve in the military as well? But to be fair to those individuals that I just mentioned, those athletes, those classical musicians and Lee Chang-ho, the goals that they had to meet in order to be granted exemptions were quantifiable. You can see and touch a gold medal. But how do you see and touch sales figures? How do you see and touch influence? And so granting them an exemption from serving the military is a slightly trickier issue. Now, right now, no one, or at least no one in any position of power, is talking about exempting BTS from serving in the military. People are only talking about deferments right now. But that could change in January 2021, and that's because that's when the Grammys will take place. Will BTS be able to sweep the Grammys next year as Joon-ho was able to sweep the Oscars this year? Maybe. There seems to be a very good chance of that happening. And if it does happen, then the South Korean government will have a quantifiable standard that it can use to allow exemptions for K-pop stars. The South Korean government might be able to point at the Grammys and say that that is a new standard that K-pop stars can aspire to if they wish to be exempted from the military. But the question is, will it be a fair standard? Now, before Joon-ho won all of the Academy Awards this year, when he was asked in an interview whether he thought that he was going to win an Oscar award, he said rather humbly that there was a chance that he wouldn't win because the Oscars was a local show. And of course, by local, he meant that it was an American show. And he was right. There's a reason why the majority of movies that win Academy Awards are American movies, and that there is a separate category for foreign movies. The same thing applies to the Grammys. The Grammys is mostly an American show, and that's why most of the musicians who win awards tend to be those who are either Americans or at the very least those who sing in English. Yes, Joon-ho won all of the Academy Awards this year, But what are the chances that another Korean director, or even Bong Joon-ho himself, will be able to win another Academy Award next year? Yes, BTS might win the Grammys next year, but what are the chances that BTS or any other Korean singer will be able to achieve the same goal the following year? What I'm saying is that if the South Korean government decides to use the Grammys as a kind of standard that allows South Korean K-pop stars an exemption from having to serve in the military, then isn't that like expecting lightning to strike the same spot twice? The chances of that happening is minuscule. And is that fair to other K-pop stars? I ask this question because exactly a week from now, a member of EXO, Chen, is going to be serving in the army. Now, I don't know Chen. I don't know why he's serving in the army. Maybe he's serving in the army because he's a patriot and he wants to complete his military duty. Maybe he's serving because he has no choice like the rest of us. Maybe there is a different reason altogether. Maybe he sought deferments before and he's out of deferments now. Who knows? There are many different reasons. But assuming that he's serving in the army because he has no choice but to do so, it's kind of unfair, isn't it? And of course, like most things, this also has to do with politics. And to explain, I have to talk about this person, Chumie, who is currently the South Korean Justice Minister. I bring her up because her son has been accused several times of having been given preferential treatment while he served in the army. It was alleged that due to the powerful political position that his mother held, he was given more vacation time than most other Korean soldiers were given. Now, eventually, the prosecutor's office dropped all charges against Chumie because they said that there was not enough evidence to suggest that she had abused her power to grant his son preferential treatment. Although there is no hard evidence to suggest that Justice Minister Chu used her position of power to grant his son preferential treatment, as it turned out, she sent a text message to one of her aides, and the text message contained the phone number for her son's captain. And upon receiving that phone number, that aide, without being explicitly told to do so by Justice Minister Chu, called Justice Minister Chu's son's captain to inquire, merely to inquire, about whether or not her son would be granted an extended vacation time. And that is the key word here. It was merely inquired. There was no demand, there was no request, it was merely an inquiry, which is why there was no direct evidence, no hard evidence to suggest that there was some kind of abuse of power. Now, I cannot say this emphatically enough. Justice Chumie is not guilty of abusing her position of power. But that does not mean that the public is willing to forgive her. And the reason for that is because of this word, 눈치. So what exactly is 눈치? Well, in her book, The Power of Nunchi, Joon-ho describes nunchi as, simply put, being able to read a room. It comes down to being able to read nonverbal cues, to know what someone is thinking so that we can quickly assess what others expect from us. Now, Joon-ho's definition of nunchi has some drawbacks. She does not really take into consideration that nunchi is also used as a way to enforce the status quo, to enforce existing power structures. And that's what a lot of the South Korean public feels toward Justice Minister Chu. Yes, Justice Minister Chumie's aide voluntarily called the army captain. Yes, the aide merely inquired, not beseeched, not requested, not ordered the captain to grant more vacation time for the Justice Minister's son. It was all done on the up and up. It was the nonverbal cues that a lot of people assume was transmitted. A lot of things that were said between the lines. And that's why a lot of the South Korean public is quite upset with Justice Minister Chumie. Now, naturally, this has led to a political scandal here in South Korea. Right now, the Progressive Minju Party, which is currently running things in South Korea, is not all that popular with younger Korean men, especially younger Korean men in their 20s. Now, this is a topic for a different video, which I'll get to, but for now, let's just state the facts. They are not popular with men in their 20s. So, once we add Justice Chumie's son scandal to the mix, the Korean government is feeling the heat when it comes to this particular demographic group. And at the end of the day, all politics is local. It doesn't matter how many fans a BTS has in Korea or all around the world. On election day, the only thing that matters to the Korean government is that it is Koreans who vote. And naturally, the Minju Party would prefer not to alienate a huge chunk of the Korean voters. Now, in a previous video, I said that if North and South Korea ever reunify to form a single united Korean state, then it would be a bad idea for this hypothetical united Korean state to suddenly do away with the military conscription system. The reason that I gave was a little long and complicated, so I'm not going to rehash it here, but I will give you the link down below. But I bring this up because while I do believe that getting rid of the conscripted military system is a bad idea in a hypothetical united Korean state, I think that as long as South Korea does not reunify with the North, as long as both countries remain separate entities, then I think that it would be a much better option for South Korea to simply do away with the current conscription military system that we have right now. There are all kinds of reasons to argue against a military conscription system. It is immoral. It is immoral to force a free people to be forced to serve in the military. It is immoral to force a people to serve in the military and pay them so little money. Also, fielding large armies is no longer the winning strategy that it was in the 19th century. South Korea is a wealthy and developed country that can quickly adopt new technologies, new fighting methods that are much more effective and efficient than the current system that we've got right now. Now, it doesn't take much imagination to see that suddenly doing away with the military conscription system and replacing it with an all-volunteer military force will decrease the size of the military and also at the same time drive up the cost of operating military. But even so, I believe that the moral arguments alone is enough to justify doing away with the military conscription system. But that's just my opinion. What do you all think? Do you think that BTS should be exempted from serving in the military? Or do you think they should be forced to serve in the military as everyone else? Or do you think that the conscription military system should be done away with? If you have an opinion on this matter, I'd love to hear from you. Leave it down below in the comment section. And that brings us to the end of this video. If you like this video, don't forget to click on the like and the subscribe button as well as the notification bell. My name is John Lee, and I'll see you all in the next time. Bye.